Hello, my name's Andy. Welcome to episode 99 of the Ginger Pond Keeper. Right, so this video is going to be about some of the prep I'm doing for autumn and winter. So the major problem I've got coming up to this time of year are leaves and general detritus that's falling into the pond from the trees and plants that surround it. The first job I'm going to do before I do the main work is I just clear any leaves and acorns that have fallen from the oak tree behind my house and clear them up from the bottom of the pond before I start, really. And there hasn't been that many fallen. I maybe could have left the pond another week or so, but I had the time, so I thought I'd get it done. So that's the first job, and it's just a quick little job. The next couple of jobs involve getting in the pond, so I put on the very attractive waders and gloves. I don't know why I'm bothering with the gloves, actually, because one, they've got holes in, and two, the water's not really that cold at the moment. I've dropped the pond about 6 inches or a bit more, just because it makes it easy. Now, the spear I've got in my right hand is actually just an old kitchen knife taped to some PVC pipe. And that's to help me trim back the lilies. Now, the reason I cut the lilies back now, even though, they've kind of started to die off and die back and sort of decay away a bit, but the majority look really healthy. But the reason I'm cutting back now is I'm putting the leaf fencing on the pond, and it will mean it will be an absolute nightmare to do it later on in winter. So I cut them back now because I'd rather do that, because lilies are a plant that when they get to the end of their cycle do start to sort of decay away, and I don't really want that in the pond. So what I'm doing here, I look like a crazy old man staring into the pond, but what I'm doing is I'm pulling on the stems of the plant and then cutting away at the very base of the plant where it goes into the basket with the knife. And it's a bit of a hokey system, but it does work really well. Obviously I have to be a bit careful because I've got a knife and I don't want to drop it into a pond with a liner. And also, you obviously can't see, but 3, I think, of the 4 carp are swimming around me as we speak, having a look at what I'm doing. They're very unbothered when I get in the pond. So they're right kind of round about me. So I had to be quite careful. It might not look like I'm being careful, but I am being quite careful here. And yeah, so I had to get all the lilies out, which didn't take too long. I sped it up a bit, but it's quite a quick job, and that kind of hokey spear I've got there did do the trick. It is a bit of a shame because they do look quite nice and they hadn't really started decaying back that much. Now the next job is to cut the plants back. Now, as I said in a previous video, the plants at this time of year, although they still look quite sort of lush and green, they are starting to get a bit more fragile, and a few are starting to turn brown and die off, and they are more susceptible to kind of bending over and breaking in any kind of heavy rain or strong winds. And obviously as well, because I'm putting the netting on, I want to cut them down to below the level of the posts you can see that surround the pond with the heron fence. So it's a case of cutting back all of the dead or dying ones or broken stems and just sort of tidying things up a bit. And then obviously, as I said, cutting them a bit lower. Now, I'm not doing the big trim back. Now, if you followed my channel, you know at some point in the year, I pretty much trim all of the marginal plants right back down to water level. And I just find that I get a neater and better growth from them the following year if I do that. And I've got quite a big job to do, I think, this year, and I will make a video of it because I think they are all overgrown their baskets, all of the plants. So I'm going to have to do probably a little bit more work, but I got to admit, I don't really know what I'm doing. I've just kind of do what works based on a little bit of advice, but it seems to work. They grow quite strong and sturdy, and they are home to quite a lot of insects, and other kind of wildlife, and I should make a video of it at some point, of what does live in amongst that. There's less and less frogs in my pond, which I'm happy with. Again, if you followed me before, you know I'm not that much of a fan of frogs. Right, at this point is when the battery in my GoPro died. So you've missed me cutting the rest of the plants, which isn't that exciting. And you also missed me putting the netting on, because I didn't realise the battery had died. And yeah, you've missed me doing this. But it doesn't matter. It's a fairly simple thing. I've just put some netting on, and it's very, very fine netting. And I have spoken about in previous videos how you can't really see, like we're showing here, unless you're really close up to it. You can't really see into the pond. And I'll talk a bit right at the very end of this video a bit more about that, and how I'm overcoming some of the problems of last year. But anyway, it's attached to a bit of PVC piping there, and that's just to keep it up against the fence so leaves can't fall around the back. So yeah, and it's just really roughly cut to the shape of the pond, and then attached to some hooks that are screwed into those posts. It's a bit longer at the front because that enables me to kind of fold it back when I want to open the gate and do stuff in the pond during autumn and winter. And there's the culprit, really, that big oak tree that's dropping hundreds of acorns and leaves and thousands and thousands of leaves, literally, before it finishes. I'll be taking that knitting off probably January. Right, the next job I need to do is the less regular cleaning of filters. So the Tempest and the pressure filter, their normal cleaning function, if you've had either of these type of filters, you know, doesn't completely get rid of all the dirt that's in them. And I find with my Tempest, because I've got a lot of organic matter and organic waste in my pond, that over time it builds up and blocks the filter. So I have to take it out of the system, take it apart, and then clean it. At the moment I'm just giving it a bit of a pre-clean before I start. Right, so the first job is to do the pressure filter. Now I've got the pressure filter as a pre-filter to reduce the amount of times that I need to take the Tempest out of the system and then take it apart and give it a thorough wash. And I was doing it almost monthly last year. Since getting the pressure filter, this is the first time I've done it since the beginning of the summer, since spring really. So the pressure filter's really done a good job. I've taken the pressure filter out a couple of times and cleaned it, but I've not had to take the Tempest out, which is really good news. As you can see, in spite of numerous cleans with the pump, and which compresses the sponges and stuff, it doesn't really get rid of all the muck in a pressure filter. You do need to take it apart quite a lot. What you see me pouring this water in there is a sump that I've got that I use a pump in that pumps the water to the drain at the front of the house, and I use it to drain the Tempest and my other filters when I'm cleaning them. So anyway, I don't use a very sophisticated or subtle technique. I basically just get a power washer and bombard it with water and get all the dirt off that way. I'm not going over things with a fine tooth comb or anything. I'm just blasting all the dirt off, really. Simplest and less labour intensive way works best for me. And I just kind of basically clean it in or around the sump, and then I can drain all the water off then. Now the sponges in Oase pressure filters are pretty easy to take off. There's just that plate on the bottom that holds them in place with a couple of screws, and you can just take them off and then you can clean them. The only tricky thing in a Oase pressure filter is putting that large clip that goes all the way around the top of it to seal it in place. I always find that difficult. I don't know about anyone else whether they find it difficult. I think I was having trouble again with filming it in, so I don't think I capture my repeated attempts to get it on properly. I do in the end, and there's no leaks or anything, but I always find it a little trickier than perhaps it really is. So yeah, I just unscrew that bottom plate and then give that a bit of a wash in some water. So yeah, I just get the power washer again and clean the sponges, and it doesn't take too long. I will speed this up in a minute for you because it's not that exciting. I have started to use the power washer to clean the brushes in my multi-bay as well, just because it's so much quicker. It's worth setting up the power washer for how much quicker it is to clean the brushes in the moving bed, in the multi-bay, sorry. So yeah, that's all the sponges clean. I probably won't take the pressure filter. It depends how mild the autumn and winter gets. And again, we could talk a lot about feeding your fish in the colder months. I have a couple of videos, or at least one video, about it. But I don't think, however much I feed them and however mild the autumn and winter is, that I'm going to need to clean the pressure filter again until the beginning of the year, and I'll do a bit of a clean just before we start, and I start feeding at higher levels. I don't know if I should use the power washer on this part of the pressure filter, but again, it's just, I'm lazy, and it's the simplest way of doing it. It's not very sophisticated. I don't think there's anything I can really damage there, and it just means it gets it nice and clean, nice and quickly. A little bit of slow-mo for you, just because I thought it would be a good idea. Now, with that all clean, or generally all clean, that cable you can see dangling from the lid is for the UV, which I don't use. I've got a separate UV in my system. If I had a spare socket on my switch box, then I might use it as well. But as I haven't, then yeah, I don't use it at all really, and I don't think I really need it. The type of algae I get in my pond, which is kind of string algae, isn't really going to be treated by a UV anyway. So it's more the kind of very small and suspended and sort of microscopic algae stuff that it works on and prevents, rather than string algae. So I'm not really sure it'd be doing me any good to have more UV. I've got 55 watt UV. I think that's probably enough. So after I make a bit of a meal of screwing these screws and putting this plate back on, that's really the pressure filter cleaned. Now, I haven't shown you me taking apart the filtration to get the pressure filter and the Tempest out. It's really just, unscrewing some rubber boots, really. That's all it really is. But it's just really hard to film in the filter shed because it's so small and confined. So I haven't really shown you that. So I'm just showing you me out in the garden cleaning it. Now, with a type of muck that I can't get out of the Tempest, and there's not a lot this time, but it's much easier to clean it with the power wash. And to do that, I really want to take the media out and wash that separately. And also it's just generally easier to get the muck out with the media not in it. But it is a nightmare, unless I'm really missing something, and please tell me if I am. It's a nightmare getting the media out. I've sped this up quite a lot. It takes quite a lot of jiggling and shaking to get all the media out. But once I do, it's just a question is a very, very rough and ready, stick the Tempest into the sump and then get the power washer, stick the power washer in the Tempest and spray around. So basically the dirt that I'm trying to get rid of that doesn't come off on the normal washing congregates on the grids that stop the media coming out of the Tempest really. So it kind of sticks in there. So I'm cleaning out both on the top and the bottom around all of that, and just getting rid of that, and it just gives, I was going to say a spring clean, but an autumn clean to the Tempest, and get it as clean as it can be before we get into winter. And I start to, naturally clean the filters a little less often anyway. So yeah, very, very sophisticated cleaning method, but quite effective, and doesn't take a lot of work, which is very useful for me anyway. And I do clean a little bit of the outside just because it's sitting in the sump, so I make sure I get anything that it's sitting in the sump off it as well. I do need to clean the sump out at some point. It has struck me the last couple of times I've done a filter clean. Right, this is the worst job. It's even worse than getting the media out, is getting the media back in again. And in a minute I speed this up to 20 times. So this is it took me 20 times longer than you're seeing me do it. It's a real pain in the bum. And again, I really hope I'm being a bit foolish, and there's actually a really simple way of doing this that I'm missing, because that would make my life a lot easier. On the rare occasions though, I'm probably only going to do this once or twice a year, so it's not a regular a job as it was last year before I got the pressure filter. Yeah, then I get my lovely hoodie rag to give it a bit of a wipe. I'm not overly fussy, as you can tell. I like things to be clean enough so that I have a nice hygienic environment for my fish. I'm not that fussy about things looking their best, as you could probably tell. So then it's just a question of getting the end caps on top and bottom. The bottom one, I'm just trying to make sure I get it on nice and straight, obviously, because you don't want anything to be leaking. Depending on what your setup's like, I have to be quite careful that I get the water waste outlet and the air inline in the right positions, just so that they're in the right place for when I want to connect them back up to the pipework in the filter shed. So they have to be the right way around, basically, is what I'm saying. Which isn't that difficult, but there's no room to kind of jiggle things around if I get them the wrong way around. So I spend a bit of time just making sure they're in the right place and everything's tight. And then it's just a question of putting the end cap on the top, and then that is done. And then it's just a question of connecting everything back up. And I've done it now 4 or 5, maybe a bit more times, and I've never had any leak problems, which is nice. Anyway, what I'm doing here is draining my moving bed. And I did used to use a pond vac and vac the bottom of the moving bed wheelie bin, as it is, to try and get any detritus, but there never was anything. I poke around a bit with this just to see if I can find anything on the bottom to get it stick to that mesh, but there never is anything. And I guess moving beds are inherently quite self-cleaning if they're set up reasonably well. So all I do is every month or so is drain the system. Now it looks like that pipe works quite high off the bottom, but actually there's a 90-degree bend, which means that bends downwards, obviously, which means it's taking water from the sort of bottom centimetre of the moving bed. Right, so that's all my work and getting my preparation. Now the one thing I've done different this year, now if you followed my channel, you'll know that last year I lost fish to an otter whilst the leaf netting was on the pond. And the usual way I keep an eye on the pond, especially when the weather's a bit inclement, is with a CCTV camera, which is up on a little piece of wood on the side of the shed, where the arrow is, although it's not there now. And that's the change I've done this year. So basically, when this netting's on, I can't see anything in the pond because it won't see through the netting. Now normally when I have the camera nice and high on the shed, I get a really nice view of the pond and the fish, and I can see down to the bottom of the pond depending on where the sunlight and glare is. So if I can see if the fish are flashing, say, or if they're jumping or how active they are, and then keep an eye on them. So, you know, it works really well and gives me a nice view of the pond. But when the net's on, of course, I can't see it. What my plan is this year is I've moved the camera down lower so it's underneath the net. Now, the only downside with that is I can't see sort of really underneath the surface that much. I can see the top sort of few inches and you can see the fish swimming about here, but I can't really see down into the pond. But, you know, it gives me a reasonably good view, and it certainly gives me a better view than trying to look through the net. And it means if I do have any visitors and they get past my garden defences and they get into the pond, at least I'll be able to see it. I might not be able to save everything, but at least I'll have some warning. So yeah, that's it really. That's my autumn and winter prep. I don't do anything else really in terms of winter. As I said, when I take the netting off, which will be in January or so, I will cut the plants back and cut them right back to water level. But I don't do anything else. I haven't really got any pipe work that's exposed. There's a tiny bit maybe coming out of the surface of the water for about 3 or 4 inches, but the rest is either underground or in the shed. So far in winters that's not really been a problem, so I don't really feel the need to sort of lag any of the pipe work or any of that. I don't cover the pond any more than to keep leaves off really. But anyway, that's it. That's this episode over. It is episode 99. That hasn't passed me by. The next one will obviously be episode 100, and I'd like to do something a little different for that episode. I haven't decided what yet. I mean, it's not the 100th video I've put out on the channel. I'm over 200 for videos, including sort of clip and long clip videos and shorts and whatever. But it'll be the 100 proper episodes, so I'll have a think. If you've got any ideas, please share them. I'm always open to some ideas. I will obviously make a video when I take the nets off. And I am due to be getting a fish at some point, probably before February. So I will definitely make a video for that. It could be before Christmas. I'm not sure yet. Anyway, that is definitely it. That's definitely me finished. Thanks very much for watching. Please like and subscribe if you've enjoyed it. And I will see you next time.